Welcome to LaunchCode with Mike and Paul, two industry veterans who will take you on their exciting adventure building their software company from the ground up. Get ready for cutting-edge tech insights, candid stories, and a whole lot of fun along the way. Welcome to their amazing adventure. Welcome to LaunchCode.
Hello and welcome to our next episode of LaunchCode with Mike and Paul. We have an exciting episode today. In this Elastiforce podcast, we're going to talk about higher education, but higher education globally. Some of the significant differences and how technology is being used to extend and support that mission. So with us today is our friend Tracy Lemon, the CEO of Visions Group. They're a technology consulting company that's been serving the global higher education community for nearly 30 years. So Tracy, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Paul and Mike.
Great. So maybe you can start off in telling our listeners about Visions Group, their history, and how you and Mike met for the first time out there in the UK.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so Vision's been around for a while. I think way back in the 90s, I signed them up as a PeopleSoft partner. And they were a great bunch of guys, grown out of the oil and gas industry, formed up a consulting firm with... based on PeopleSoft HR at that stage. So really nice bunch of guys. I went off doing strategy and banking for a while and then eventually decided, once you've touched PeopleSoft, you always wanted to come back. So went back to it and came into Visions, brought along some of my other colleagues and decided to turn it around and change the way that we did things. Consulting firms typically, again, a lot of green beans and take lots of, consultants onto projects and kind of educate them on the projects. We'd all been victims of that. I've been a customer, I've been a vendor, been a consultant before. So what we thought is let's change it up. So we only hire very, very experienced people and go in with a small team, doing to give you an example, a project with Campus Solutions, full financial, supply chain, HR, payroll, CRM, middleware, BI, etc. We won a large project like that. Another large consulting firm said to me, gee, you must have a team of about 50. And in actual fact, we had 15. And we only ever ramped up to, I think it was 20 at sort of the heat of the moment. So that's kind of a bit of Visions. We want to do things differently. And that's sort of how it's grown, over time. We've served different countries. We've worked very close with Oracle. We've worked in development projects. We've trained their own salespeople on their own products, which is quite fun. We've done a lot of pre-sales for them, going in with our Oracle badge, T-shirt. At one stage, I think we even had business cards from PeopleSoft and Oracle. They'd like to send us to all the weird and wonderful places in the world. So done a lot of that. The group does have other pieces to it. We do teaching and learning. We do content management. We do robotic process automation, document management, a lot of things around all that. Obviously, change management has grown in our practice now over the last few years, but we've always known it's an important part, and project management very important as well. I have actually one of PMI's past global presidents as my head of delivery. So a lot of fun. We've kind of taken, Mike, all the big consulting firms, most of us have come from those and kind of scaled it down into one with a lot less red tape. So that's
Fantastic.
Just a whirlwind tour. We work across EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, into Asia Pac as well, Hong Kong, Singapore, and hopefully in the US in the near future. We've done a couple of things there, and I think Mike and I met actually back in the US many years ago at a hug event, but we can't talk about that one. This is a family show, so I did meet Mike way back then, and then. Again, we then met up again in the UK when we were both working together on a tender. And thanks to Mike doing things at the last minute, I had to do it from my hotel room in Holland. But I'll forgive you for that.
I'm glad you got over it and you forgot about that whole story. Hey, I remember just starting to do work in the UK and I'd signed an agreement with PeopleSoft to be the reseller of campus solutions in the UK. And I was specifically at that point when I getting into the market, chasing Cambridge, which we ended up closing, and that was fantastic, opportunity, and great friends came out of that. But I remember every time I went to go prospect any other customer, they would always say, "Hey, do you know Visions Consulting? We work with Visions Consulting." It was on and on and on. You had such a great reputation in the marketplace, and a large part of that, especially as I got to know you, was you're customer centric, you're honest, and sometimes in this market, it's difficult in consulting because customers want to hear what they want to hear. When you always approached it with, "I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to tell you it's shorter time frame for the implementation, or it's going to cost you less. I'm not going to lowball you and change order you later." So I always loved that about Visions, and that honesty is certainly proven itself with your success. But my question is really about how you've navigated the marketplace over the last 20 to 30 years, and in more recent times, how have things changed with cloud implementations?
Mm. Yeah, good question. I think yeah, honesty is a really important thing. I mean, there's reality, and I always remember, quoting, I think it was Jack Welch saying, "Face reality, don't flinch." It's a really hard one, but I think that by doing that, I tell my team that all the time. Yeah, you kind of get that grip, but that also feeds over into, how do we navigate? How have we navigated these last kind of 20 or 30 years the company's been in existence? And one of the things I believe is you've got to learn how to play 3D chess. And I don't know, you've got to visualize all the moving parts. Companies get acquired, vendors get acquired, products change, technology changes. Which ones are you going to jump at? Which are real? Which are, passing fads? What is going to fade away? And I think, again, it's, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think learning to play that 3D chess in knowing what's out there, what could be coming. And the key thing is you've got to stay relevant. Otherwise, you see companies going out or starting to grasp at straws and, keep doing the old things. There's great, it's lovely. You do need to keep doing old things, but you need to be keeping your eye on where it's going. I think since we've moved through all the different sort of technology kind of fads, phases, and changes, coming to cloud now, we're almost doing a circle back around to standard process for everything. So I think that, where we've always believed change management is important. I mean, systems, there's technology, but I mean, it's about the people using those systems. So I think more so with cloud now, and there's actually more drivers, because not only is it you need to get people to move to a standard process where they can't easily customize, but you also need to understand that even from an Oracle perspective, let's say, or could be anybody, Oracle, Workday, SAP, if they were selling cloud solutions, once a customer's moved off on-prem or a legacy system into the cloud, they've had to go and get all their data. This is not difficult now after 3 years to shift to a different vendor.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of rocked the world of the vendors. So very interesting enough, we've been leading some engagements with Oracle, talking to their sales teams about why change management is important. So I think that definitely going forward, I think, again, there's the other side of this is that now that we've got standard process again, how do we do those strange, wonderful things that we want to do? And I think this is where a lot of firms have gone wild and started writing systems on the outside again. So once again, here we go back to wanting to have the vendor giving us a tool to kind of customize the system.
Yeah.
So I think for higher ed, it's been particularly hard. And I think we have still got a couple of hard years ahead of us getting people's minds around standard things. I mean, that the cloud products, the two vendors I'm referring to, how long has it taken to get those products to market? Well, I think a lot of this has got to do with that. So again, those customizations are key things. So yeah, so change is different. And I definitely think that consulting firms, implementation partners, we also need to apply the same change management principles to ourselves, because we need to reinvent ourselves. We need to become more a guiding people and advising people, as opposed to configuring and technology type work. So it's a different implementation strategy. Now you need much stronger functional people, and people that understand change and understand selling a vision and helping people to understand the vision of what the software is going to bring to them.
Yeah. So, you've hit on a bunch of the key things about changes from the cloud implementation, and so different from, say, the on-prem solutions that would be customized. And it's good in a lot of ways, but and you mentioned some of your approaches, which is change management becomes all the more important because you're not recreating their past system in the new system. You're definitely taking the best practices. Is there anything you changed with your methodology specific because of cloud? I know change was definitely one of them. Is there anything else that changed?
I think that I don't think fundamentally there's anything, there's all the, are you doing something in agile mode? Are you doing it in a waterfall mode? But guess what? A lot of packaged software still needs a bit of waterfall mode. So unfortunately, we've got to blend how we do that. So I think from the actual implementation approaches, again, still following, a defined process that customers know. But remember, there's no gap analysis, as there's no fit gap. We need to lead them by showing them what the new software is going to do, working on the standardized process, work out what isn't going to work, work out how you're going to change that internally. So there's a lot more of how are we going to do this as opposed to doing different. As I mentioned before, a lot more functional people are involved. So our team has changed in that there's much more focus on functional and integration. So those are the key things. But again, as I said to you, we are more thought leaders and guiders and advisors as opposed to technical implementers.
Yeah.
And I think our international flavor helps with that because we've had to bridge cultures and country specifics, language difficulties, etc. I mean, no disrespect to you guys, I know from the US, but most people, vendors in the US think they're international when they got an office in Canada. Well, hello, there's a couple of other countries out there with totally different views and approaches. So I think that even with the new cloud stuff, we have to approach things quite sensitively. Some cultures don't like to be told how to do things and forced to do things. So, it's again the old story. People say, do you understand this? And they kind of say yes, but they do that. Now, is that yes or no? I don't know. So I think that culturally, the cloud is going to bring us some more challenges. Interestingly enough, though, in a lot of what you would think are less sophisticated environments, they are more likely to buy software by reputation. So we find much easier sales in some of the smaller countries or less sophisticated countries that say, well, if it's good enough for Cambridge or it's good enough for, I don't know, Vanderbilt, it's good enough for me. And they don't go through lengthy, sales processes to go and acquire something. They're saying, well, if it works, then it has to work for us. Let's see how we can make it work. So that we've seen a positive change with cloud.
In tying on to your global view, because you do really have a global vision as to what people are doing. We actually had the Higher Education Users Group on an earlier podcast, and there are really great things in which they're doing. But Mike and I, we've worked with them more from an American perspective. You really had the ability to work with them from a global or an EMEA perspective. Maybe talk a little bit about what have you seen the value that the Hug brings to those EMEA customers?
I think it's great, and I think that the Hug has been a real kind of catalyst, or and really pulled a lot of the thinking together and actually created an ecosystem. So one of the things is that's really important with implementing any kind of software is having an ecosystem to help you along the way. And I think that we've seen the Hug play a key role. I mean, when we would go into any particular deal, we will always talk about the value of the Hug in that they can reach out to other institutions anywhere around the world that they can reach out to and learn from their experiences. So the Hug has had some coverage over. We have an Asia Hug, there's a Hug down under in the ANZ area. There's been an Arab Hug that ran for a while. It hasn't been up and running for a little while. We have a Southern African Hug. There's an EMEA Hug, and actually interesting facts is that we have more attendees at the African Hug, in the Southern African Hug, than they have in the whole of the EMEA Hug. So it's a very vibrant Hug down in Africa where the universities take turns in hosting the Hug conference on their campuses. So that reduces the cost, and it brings a lot of people. They have great events. We also know, so if you guys want to come down to any of them or any of the US customers, you've got to pick the right ones. Come to the ones, Wits University in Joburg, best food. Cape Town, often best entertainment, best wine. Pretoria, you know, Barry Hudson, no, his ones have not got, don't have the best entertainment. So you've got to kind of pick them. The EMEA Hugs, I think there's also fragmentation there because the UK has something called the Snug. So not only the Hug, but the Snug. And that was a senior users group for the UK. And that had a different flavor. That was one where Mike, you would have remembered it, it was a lot about what the product didn't have and not what it did have. Where's the placements? You remember that one? Yep. So, again, it had a different thing, but it's very valuable. So, to give you an example, we have a university at the tip of Africa, one you'd all like to visit, right in the winelands. They have their own vineyards and their own label. They actually had, through the Hug, and obviously I facilitated a lot of its visits into the US, to Baylor, to Vanderbilt, have met up with Rutgers and DePaul and, things like that. It gave them the ability to be able to connect with others. I think, though, for international customers, one thing that they learned, they all assumed when they go to the US that the US schools were way ahead of them in their use of technology, and actually to find out that that's not always true. So a lot of the international customers, it's given them a lot of comfort in attending these things and knowing that they can add value back to the Hug because they do things differently. So it really has a valid place. I hope it, obviously COVID really whacked them really hard. So, let's hope that with a new vision and a new way forward, we'll keep supporting them.
Tagging on to that, I know you've encountered so many different cultures and kind of different client needs, like significantly different, depending on what the requirements were in a particular country, et cetera. From my own experience, we, kind of the weird one that we had was Universidad Panamericana in Mexico City. When we were implementing, their interest rates in Mexico were so dynamic that they wanted the fees to be updated on I can't even remember if it was an hourly basis or a daily basis, but you had to recalculate the fees based on how inflation, sorry, I said inflation rate was going. Anyway, I know you had to have encountered some really interesting situations, any bolt-ons or extensions that you've done in the past that might surprise us.
Yeah, no, I think there were some interesting ones about security guards uniform laundry system that we had to create in PeopleTools to schedule when their uniforms were going to be washed, and that they could write complaints about if it shrunk or if the color changed or if they didn't like the smell of the soap. Or, I don't know, there was some really weird one. We've had interesting ones around graduation. And again, culturally different. I'm sure you've all seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that. I'm married to a Cypriot Greek, and so I know that this is true. It's true. But in Africa as well, when a person goes to graduate, the whole family goes. So some of the universities have had to write little systems to manage the family. Okay, guys, how many members are actually attending the ceremony? How many are sitting outside? So it's a whole kind of, I don't know if there was timeshare that some could sit for half an hour and then they'd swap seats. But yeah, we've written stuff around that. In the UK, stuff around having QR codes for the people going into the graduations to scan QR codes. Yeah, we've done some interesting carpool systems, more on the cloud one, even a bicycle renting system. So yeah, some interesting things. We've got some good tools to do it with those, and they all work. And I think, one's just got to be sensible about what you do and make sure that whatever you're going to add onto the systems, that they're created in a way that does not affect the upgrades. I think that's, again, a thing that's really, really important.
Yeah. Well, and following up on that question, since you've been all over, maybe you could share with us some of the awkward or maybe interesting experiences that you've had working globally. I'm sure you've had a few.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, how long have you got? But being a woman, I think some of them, yeah, some of them in some of the Middle Eastern countries are tricky, but probably not politically correct to talk about some of those right at this minute. So, yeah, I think one interesting one, I was thinking about it and I thought I was remembering seeing a lot of the activities happening at the US schools at the moment, the protests, and knowing that yeah, I've had a similar experience. I had to go and hand in a tender submission for a university, and the students were rioting at that university. And I thought, there's no way that I'm going to miss handing in this. And it had to be handed in by hand, and the couriers wouldn't go to the university because they said, no, it's too dangerous. So I loaded up our group sales director, Leslie. Her and I decided we are not scared. And we drove in to find burning tires and throwing rocks and things like that. But we know the route around the back of the university, took the back route, got in, but there were still big trees that they'd chopped down that were burning together with some tires. But it had kind of burnt down a bit there and they weren't paying too much attention. So Leslie and I, in our heels, parked my nice Z4 distance back in case it caught fire. And then we proceeded to climb across all of these burning logs. So yeah, we were safe. I had some holes in my stockings because they were like zapping it. But other than that, we managed to get the tender in. So yeah, that was quite a memorable event. But yeah, it could have been worse, I guess.
Wow.
And then yeah, so that's an African story. I think going into Turkey was quite interesting. We were in the process or in the early stages of an acquisition. We were going to acquire a Turkish consulting firm. And you know, again, Turkey, there's not that many women leaders in Turkey. So you know, obviously, I was negotiating with all men. I'd never met many of them. And Turkish airline decided to leave my luggage behind. So I arrived there to go for 1.5 days intense meetings, only in the clothes that I had, and I had to go straight to a meeting. And I was wearing a pair of jeans, a pair of trainers, and I had a T-shirt on that said "Born to Rule." I will rule the world. Like a cartoon. It was from the one cartoon Stewart, you know, the funny little.
That was probably a good thing. You know, it sets the tone.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't go in with this T-shirt, so I had to wear my big thick coat over and zip it up so that I could sit down in the meeting. Yeah, so funny stories, other places where you sit in a bus and you've got to take all these vaccinations and the mosquitoes come out of the seats of the bus at the university and you start panicking. And one of my staff was swatting himself like this, like in such a panic, thinking he's going to get yellow fever, malaria or whatever. So yeah, there's many stories.
Wow. Yeah. That's great.
So on the serious side, looking at differences globally versus the States, are there any, and I know every country is different, so it's the States and, you know, you can compare nationalities and different forms of higher education, governance, et cetera. But are there any threads when you look at the use of technology or ERP globally versus the States? Anything that stands out in your mind?
You know, I just think that in general in higher ed, I'm generalizing, but I don't think that schools all over the world have the money that some of the US schools have. And I think that is a key thing. So I think there's always been a thread about obviously staying relevant. Secondly, trying to do more with less.
Yeah.
So they really, once they've done purchases, they have to, you know, really sweat those assets. And I did say assets. They really have to sweat them to get maximum value for their purchases. So again, for them, it's not, oh, let's get something and see how it works. So they need to maximize that. They've got to keep looking for value. And I think we realized that quite a while back. And we do something now called a health check. We've been doing it for a good few years. And we found it invaluable. So even Oracle sent us into some customers to do this, where we go and take a look at the deployment of a particular solution, whether it's campus solutions or finance or HR or whatever it is. Hopefully we'll soon be doing cloud ones as well. But having a look at what they've used, what they haven't used, what they've used badly, what's broken, how much they've customized, give them percentage of, sometimes they think they're over customized to find they're not really. to see if there's any dangerous customizations, etc. And that then gives you a platform to start from, to start looking at where they can gain value, because many of them have not implemented all the different modules. And I think that typically as well, we've seen in the US, a lot of the universities, we ask them, have you used these new tools? Have you used this new bit of functionality? And they often say, no, we don't know. We don't think we need it. And I think that that's where we're seeing from international, where we do have diverse university models, that we have to do things differently. Maybe just as an aside, to give you an example, way back when one university we worked with wanted to use PeopleSoft, Campus Solution Financial Aid, which is very use specific. So we thought, and I thought about it and I thought, no, I think if we can put together a US user that knows the system inside out, together with one of our financial aid specialists, and see, can we use the standard functionality, but just think about it differently. And we cut customizing that product from almost 3-man years down to 3-man months to customize it. And now we roll that out globally. So we can roll out Campus Solutions Financial Aid, US Financial Aid globally. So again, it's just about thinking differently and trying to bring that. So I think the differences, as again, just to recap, really is about having to do more with less.
Mhm.
And then also having to think differently about how they use the product.
Yep. So I'm curious, what are some of the extensions and optimizations that you've seen with each of these PeopleSoft product lines? Because customers are really trying to extend their investment. So I'm just curious what you've seen.
I think that you know, obviously from an extension point of view, we've done, you know, some of the boring ones like housing and residence, which lots have to do, but there are different touches in there. You know, again, looking at some where they don't pay fees, other ones where they have to be segregated on possibly sex and race and marriage and various other things. So it's not just one size fits all. There's complex residence systems down to real simple ones where you're renting out a room. I think that you know, that has been a big one that we've built. The other one is a fees estimator. Student Campus Solutions doesn't allow you to check out what the fees would be. Just get an estimation. What is it going to cost me? You know, in many countries they don't have fees, which is fair enough, but in a lot of countries they do, and students can't afford it. So we built some various flavors of fees estimators that a student can play around with up front and see what, or the parents can, even if they really wanted to go and check it out and see what it's going to cost them. Then obviously with the later versions of tools, with all the fluid stuff, we looked at again building onto the fluid registration for program enrollment. So things like program enrollment is not a big thing in the US, and that is something that is very big internationally. That's about fixed curriculum, but your US schools do have fixed curriculums for certain programs and paths of study. So and it's very powerful. And again, that's one of those modules where if we sit and think with a US school, we sit down and think together how this would apply, I think you'll see a huge amount of value that will come out of things like that. And I mean, that is something that comes from international. And I think there have been, Mike, you'd be better positioned here to comment, but I think I have seen some of the US schools embracing that now, taking that on.
Not as many as that could use it. Let's put it that way. So
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
About that, you know, that thinking there. Then again, online applications, because there's stuff where we've done what we call triple offers, where we're offering study and financial aid and residence all in the same application, doing all the fancy footwork in the background, and linking that to the document management system and running checklists against the paperwork that the students are submitting. So those are some fun extensions that we've built, working with all the big document management providers. So I think that you know, it's been a pretty neat thing that we've built there. Obviously, graduate research management. I don't think enough universities globally have embraced the new functionality from Campus Solutions. So I think that's another area. Think about how to use that. And then, of course, the activity management, which is also came along with program enrollment with the more international modules, which you could argue some of it you could do in your learning management system, but equally, it's a pretty neat module. We unfortunately were one of the very early adopters, and we were the first ones to have a class with 1,500 students. And the module kind of came to a grinding halt. But we worked with Oracle's development team, with Vivian's team. Vivian was actually herself even involved. And yeah, we had to build that module out in a lot more robust form to handle the high volumes of, because we have more than 1,500 students in some of the international universities for some of the courses. So yeah, there's some of the things. I mean, we're seeing a lot of extensions and rethinking supply management, the supply chain modules in financials, definitely. And we're seeing in HR a lot more around recruitment. So, you know, again, there's areas there that are being, you know, built out.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. The housing module, I can't tell you how many times I had customers say, I really wish that Campus Solutions had a housing module. You know, we didn't need something super sophisticated, but we really would have liked it fully integrated. So that's really great that you guys have developed
That's,
that.
and I think one of the things, as well as the funny ones that we've seen with financial aid, is when you go to implement financial aid in universities where they don't charge fees, and they tell us, no, we must have financial aid, this big module to run stipends, to pay out, you know, $5 a month to some student for food.
Yeah.
But no, let's implement that. We have to advise customers then, say, we don't think that's a good use of your money. Let's
Right.
rather do that, do a small little bolt on, but not to use that. Yeah.
Hey, so with Visions, you know, so successful globally, what are your plans for the States?
Well, I think that, you know, from what all we've said today, we've had years of experience. Um, we know that a lot of people are going to be moving to the cloud in time, but the solutions still have to run. Obviously, we come off again a lower price point because of just from economy, different economies. So I think that again, we are at a good price point. I think that with our experience, we're going to bring different thinking.
Yeah.
Because again, no disrespect to you guys, you probably all think fairly similarly,
Yeah.
because that's your market and you've been doing it that way. And we coming saying, but why are you doing that? Have you ever thought about doing it differently? So I think that we'll be bringing a very strong change management focus, because we've got to try and get people to think differently. But we also bring that experience from other markets, different ways people have done things. We're very careful about customizations. We believe about configuring, not customizing. So let's try and use it, but use it differently, think differently, configure it differently. And then I think that we come with a solid, you know, base of skills. Our guys have been around. I mean, yeah, I've got some old ones, don't worry. They've been there for a long time. They got loads of experience. And then we have younger team of enthusiastic people that have, you know, love all these tools and just want to keep playing with them. And I think the nice thing is we also know the cloud products. Obviously, we ourselves have not yet implemented Student Cloud or any of those, but we will. We've had some people working with the development team doing the testing and things, so we have a good feel for it. And of course, we've helped with some of the international input and stuff like that. So the nice thing is that for us, we understand the legacies and the on-prem solutions, we understand the cloud, and that puts us in a good position to assist in moving stuff across. The other thing is that we have had to do it very efficiently and economically. As I said to you earlier, you know, international institutions don't necessarily have the kind of money that US institutions have. And for that, I think we've built some interesting tools, and I think that we just keep it simple and try to move things in a simple fashion at a low cost for the customers. But I think the main thing is understanding the needs of all the stakeholders, because that's what we're going through now, is understanding, you know, all those stakeholders, understanding the culture, understanding what they expect. Students expect a lot more now, and we have to have the debate whether a degree is relevant anymore. There's many students asking that question. So whatever we do, we have to keep, you know, who is the customer? But bearing in mind there are other stakeholders. So I think that that's something that Visions are acutely aware of. Who is the customer? I think that's a key thing.
Yeah, no, really good. And kind of tagging on to that, probably our last question here. And this is exactly in sync with some of the things you said, and we've covered a lot of topics. But what would you say the key ingredients are that have made Visions successful, both with customers and with partners?
Our motto is, well, my motto that I brought in and that we've embraced is no surprises.
Yeah.
So we're going to tell you if things are going wrong. We're going to tell you if we think you're doing something stupid. And we do that internally and externally. So I think that, as you've known me, I'm honest and frank. Sometimes could be called abrasive, but we'll tell you the true story. So I think the no surprises is important. Our customers, they really appreciate that, because too many firms tell them what they want to hear. We don't. We tell you what's really happening, and we'd rather warn you about things that could go wrong before they go wrong, so that we can preempt that and change it. I think that I got a really lovely quote from a customer, and the customer is very well known in globally in the higher ed world. And he said, in a reference, that he said that when you buy visions, you don't just buy really good and experienced consultants, but you buy a whole ecosystem. And I think that that's a key thing. I think I saw Elastiforce, I think you quoted something about the African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone.
Yep.
And if you want to go far, go together. And I think that that's one of the things that we think is imperative. We can't be all things to all people. So the main thing is, if the customer has a requirement, we'll be able to help you find it, and a good quality one of those. So I think for us, our success over time is that we work hard and play hard. You know, we got to still keep having fun. You got to laugh, and you just got to be honest and make sure there are no surprises.
Yeah. Great comments. This has been fantastic. Lots of good topics, lots of good information. Tracy, thank you very much for joining us today. This has really been enlightening and a great conversation. So we'd like to thank everybody for joining us here today on LaunchCode with Mike and Paul, and we will see you on the next episode.
You have been listening to LaunchCode with Mike and Paul. You can find all episodes on your favorite podcast services and on our website at elastiforce.com. In addition, if you have software development or Oracle or PeopleSoft managed service needs, visit us at elastiforce.com and let's see how we can help.